Hey, good evening, all. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to the uh, this week's KMUG TikTok. Today, I am going to walk you through the features of Visual Studio 2022. Well, we will see what's all new features are coming in, what's the roadmap, and where you can download the newest preview version of Visual Studio. Okay, so before I start, I will like to introduce myself. My name is Amal Dev. I work as an assistant manager at KPMG, and I have around 15 plus of years of experience in working with technologies in Microsoft Stack. Uh, Sorry about that. Okay, let me see. Okay, so I think there is some transition there. Let me. All right. Oops. Okay, so let's omit that slide for the time being. So I'll walk you through what is there in the newest version of Visual Studio. As I said earlier, it is the 64-bit version. So up until now, up until 2019, what we have was the 32-bit version of the app. Even though with Visual Studio we were able to create 64-bit applications, the Visual Studio process or the Visual Studio application itself was a 32-bit version. So it was one of the most requested features in the developer community to have the 64-bit version of the Visual Studio. So with 2022, Microsoft is building that from scratch and creating a 64-bit version of Visual Studio, and they have released the preview version early last month. So what brings or what are the advantages of going with a 64-bit version of Visual Studio? So it is lightweight and it is faster when compared to the previous version. It has some better GitHub integration in the newest version. If you remember, GitHub was acquired by Microsoft, and even in Visual Studio 2019, they were improving the features for committing or merging pull requests with GitHub. So with 2022, they are bringing in much more features. It has now got a separate dedicated window for managing GitHub or Git, and with 22 another is the refreshed and improved product themes. There are a lot of focus on accessibility or point accessibility in using Visual Studio. So there is a lot of improvements there. We will see how it looks different, how that the people with these disabilities can easily use the product and all. And before I going to the next slide, so Visual Studio 2019 is now in 16.11 version. So that will be the last update to the Visual Studio 2019. So whatever new updates will be coming in, the preview will be in 2020. So 2022 rather. And another feature it has that it comes with the .NET 6 SDK by default in 2022. As I said, this was the one of the most requested features. So what it means is that prior to 2022, uh, you may know that deven.exe is the process that is executing the application and is the name of the process. So in the previous version, the process was limited to 4 GB of memory. So even though I have a 16 gigs or 32 gigs of memory in my system, the development.exe or the Visual Studio was only taking 4 GB of the memory, 4 GB of memory. So it was not using the maximum resources that I have in my laptop or in my virtual machine, it was limited to that restriction because it was a 32-bit process. So with 64-bit process, it have much more address space, so it can uh, it can bring in more and more threads or bring in more process into the dev environment or the Visual Studio process itself. So up until now, what we're doing that they were uh, moving a lot of process or lot of functionalities into a separate process using the out of process technology or methodology. So the uh, executables like MS Build or designers, right? Though these were being hosted in a separate process outside of actual the main parent process. So that's how they try to make better use of the resources available in your machine. So even then, so when you work with large project, like let's say if it has huge number of projects and if it was taking a lot of memory, so what has happened in the previous versions is that there was a lot of pressure being there are a lot of pressure there in the garbage collection process because of this 4 GB limit, right? So whenever it reaches the memory, the garbage collector will run, it will go through the garbage collection process, and that's how it found memory, so that when there is a requirement for loading another process, they were able to do that by running the garbage collection. So these cycles were running more and more because of the limit. So with the 64-bit version, it has much more address space available to it, and so that it only needs the GC pressure is very less when you compare with the 32-bit version of Visual Studio. And also in 64-bit version, you can create 32 version of your applications. There is no limit. And also one more advantage of going for the 64-bit version is that it is now natively interacting with the 64-bit OS that is running in the behind. So again, some improvements are there, and it can scale better there. And the first preview version, as I said, is mainly focused on the 64-bit aspects of the products itself. So as you know that this product has a lot of components, so they are trying to bring a reliability with the 64-bit versioning or the 64-bit version of the app in the first preview, and you will see more and more features added into the product once it moves to the next versions or the next preview releases. So when I go through the features in Visual Studio 2022 preview one, you will see less features that are visible as a developer. So in the roadmap, there are much more functionalities or productivity tools that are coming into the latest version. So as I said, there was significant improvements or significant investment was done in refreshing the UI as well as implementing a lot of accessibility features. So now it's much more modernized UI, and the icons is much more flat, and which brings in much more clarity, legibility, and contrast to the product. And one of the other feature is like the default font available for your code editor is now Cascadia code. You may know that this particular font has better readability and ligature support rather than the ones used until now. And again, if you want a previous look and feel, you are always welcome to do that. There is no restrictions that you need to use this going forward, nothing like that by default, but this particular font is enabled by default. And there are dark and uh, light themes available by default. There are 4 themes available by default. You can switch in and out very easily from the product itself, and from the screenshot you can see what all changes they made to the icons now. And also there is a higher contrast themes also available there, so which can be uh, good use for the people with disability. And in the first preview version, there are some absentees in the product. There are some features that are not available in the product. So these are some of them. These products, these functionalities, or these little applications or little process that are available in the product is not available in the preview 1 version because they are still working on the 64-bit side of the thing. So once they complete that, you will see these features getting added to the product itself in the future versions. Okay. So as I said, the roadmap for the product is particularly based on 3 themes, that is personal and team productivity, modern development, constant innovation. So you will see in the product there are a lot of features being integrated in the collaboration area, like the live share will now have an integrated chat facility, which is planned for 2022. Modern development, it will have project templates which can be used for developing any kind of applications for any form factors using the product itself, and also everything integrated into the UI itself. So there is no need for you to go and poke around with the command prompt. Say if you are working with Git or GitHub, you normally uh, or normally make use of the commands and command prompt to uh, commit your code, make your pull request, and all those stuff, right? So with 2022, they are bringing that into the product, and you can make use of those features, and you can perform those operations without ever leaving the UI itself. So let me switch my screen and bring up Studio. So here I have 2019. This is 2019, and this is 2020. So here you can see that from the help, you can see that I'm running a 64-bit version of the Studio. I'm running the preview 1.1 version, and from 2019 I'm running the 16.10.2. Okay, you will see some of the features getting implemented or getting in 2019 also in the latest 11 version, and in the 10.2 version also you will see some of the features overlapping between these products. So so don't get confused by this, uh, say that this particular product is available in 2019, so what's the big deal? So it's like being backward compatible with that product, so that's why you are seeing in 2 places. All right. And one more thing is that when you run this, right? So if you go to the task manager, so when I said first in the beginning, right, when Visual Studio was lightweight, it is more scalable and all those stuff, the 64-bit version. But sometimes when you go to your task manager, you will see that it is consuming more memory. Why? Because since, as I said in the beginning, since it's a 64-bit version, it has much more address space so that it can load much more items into the memory, and thereby you will see a lot of thereby you will see an increase in the memory usage of the 64-bit versions. Prior to that, in the 32-bit version, as I said, they need to unload things from the memory which are not used and load the items there, and most probably you will see in with the large products you will getting out of memory exceptions. Now with 64-bit version, it will use it can use more memory, which uh, above the 4 GB limit. So don't get confused by the memory usage. So it's like getting things done faster using much more resources. So okay, so if you see here, as I said, you can see the difference between icons, right? This is the 2019 and this is 2022. You can see it's much more eligible, little bit bigger. And so before you start using the product, right? So again, Visual Studio, you by default, the lot of the preview features are opt-in. So by default, they are disabled by default. So either you can go to tools, options, and here you can search for preview features. You can see here, right? So you will see here that so most of things I have enabled. So you will see a lot of check marks here, but if some of the features I am showing here is not available for you when you're using the product, come back to this particular page and make sure that this particular feature or the preview feature is enabled. Only then it will work for you. So don't get confused if it's not working when you do it for the first time. You need to enable that preview features. So all right, so that was that. And seeing the themes, I can go and directly
Amal, there is a
theme.
question.
Hello.
Hello, Amal.
Yep.
There is a question. VS22 preview available for Mac.
Uh, Mac, I don't think it is available yet. Let me. I think it is right now only Windows. So yeah, so I missed that part. So before you can go to the Visual Studio 2022. Sorry. So you can go to visualstudio.microsoft.com and select Visual Studio 2022, from where you can download the preview versions. Right now you have all the three flavors available for you: community, professional, and enterprise. You can download, test these flavors without buying it. So even if it is professional or enterprise, there is no need for you to have the license for the product. It's free for you to try it out. So community in professional is almost same. Most of the features are there with professional, but only restriction is with usage in the bigger companies and all those stuff. Enterprise is the top end version, and I believe it's only 22. Visual Studio for Windows is available. For Mac is not yet released, the preview version. Right. So another area where you can get the latest about the product is from the Visual Studio developer blog itself. So there they will show, they will write about what's coming in the product, what's new for you, and all those stuff. So I have the references added in my slide, which I will be sharing after the session. You can make use of that. So this is how you download the product. And since the last couple of versions, it is possible to install the side-by-side versions of Visual Studio. So you, in your machine, you can have multiple versions of Visual Studio. These applications, these versions will run independently, and they are not sharing any particular files and all that. Removing one won't break the other product down. You can go and easily install, safely install, try it out. If you're not interested in further doing it, you can uninstall and you can work with the stable version. There is no restrictions on that. Right. So as I said, there are a couple of themes here: light, dark, and blue with an extra contrast. So if I switch to the dark, so normally for presentations I do with the light theme, and for my developmental activities I use the dark theme. So you can see that now in one of the preview features was better contrast for dark themes. So since I have enabled, you will see much more contrast and readability. And one another feature we have in the dark theme is here. You can see that the menus are no little bit eligible, so that it can easily what you say easily identified. If I go to the previous version, I believe I didn't. You can see the difference, right? So here the lines, the separator lines was not particularly visible. So people with disabilities have difficulty in identifying the menu items and the segregations and all those. So with the dark theme, it is much more legible now. And even for a normal users who working on a large screen with small fonts and all, it is a little bit brighter. Okay, let me switch back for the sake of the demo. Okay, so let me go and create a new project. So here there are no such differences. It is same as sold. So since it's a preview version, you will see that there are it's lacking some of the performance improvements, and you need to live with that until they have more refined versions of the studio. So since the preview version and it is moving from 32-bit to 64-bit, you can see there's a lag there. I hope it will improve with the upcoming version. So here I'll go with console app. Let's say demo one, nothing major here. The framework, as I said, it's using .NET 6 preview by default. I'm going to create this. Okay, in the meantime, it creates. So when you work in your company or when you work with the product for a larger period of time, right? You normally you will have say a set of preferences, right? You will say you will use a set of font, the size, and all those, right? So normally what we do was in the latest versions of Visual Studio, we use an editor config file for keeping our preferences, and we use that editor config file across the project so that you will get the same look and feel, right? So let me add this editor config, add new item, add editor config. So while it adds, so what it now does, it gives you a GUI interface for you. Earlier you were working with the code, working with the code where you specify all those properties and all. Now with the newest versions of Visual Studio 2022, you will see in the latest version, latest what you say, the patch release to the 2019 also, you will see this particular feature, editor config. You will get a UI for that. So rather than playing with the code, it's very easy to do modifications from the UI itself. You can set up the tab preferences, indentation sizes, the features you want to turn it on, turn it off, and all those things you can do it from the UI itself for the editor config file. So that's
Amal, there is another question. Is there any performance improvement in 64-bit app developed in VS 2019 and VS 22
uh,
64-bit?
no, there is no that much difference, because in the previous version also we were using the app we were creating. It is purely a 64-bit application. So the only thing was that the application or the project was itself created in a 32-bit version of the Visual Studio. So the whole 64-bit Visual Studio 2022 is related to the product itself, the IDE itself. It is not related anything to do with the applications we create with this IDE. It stays same. It's already have all the features of a 62-bit applications, be it in 2019 or 2022. Only thing is that the actual Visual Studio, the development process, is a 64-bit process now, so that the IDE can scale and handle the memory load much more efficiently. Hope that is clear. Okay, where was I?
You can continue.
Okay, all right. So what I'm going to do is that let me add a class. Okay, so go ahead and add a class. Again, the features I am going to show is most of them is in a productivity side of the product. The other features, as I said, is coming in the in upcoming versions. The current review release is mainly focused on the 64 aspect of the product itself, right? So there is that for me. So I create a class, right? So I have a class here for you. If you immediately see the difference between the font and all, okay, it's much more eligible. So what I'm going to do is, right, so let me do this, let me create the class itself. Okay, so what I'm going to see is public as employee. So the next step we normally do is we will press enter, we will add the curly brackets, right? So you don't need to do that. Once you do this, you can press shift enter. So press shift enter, it will add the curly brackets for you. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create a property for this class. So I'm going to say prop, press tab, I'll say string first name. Okay, press enter. Now see, so what Visual Studio now does is that it identified that I have created a class, I have created a class named employee, I have created a property named first name. Now it immediately, when I press enter, if it immediately suggests me that you are going to create another property called last name. So how it does that is that from the previous versions of Visual Studio itself, it is making use of more and more AI and machine learning. So what it does is that it analyzes the lot of open source projects available in GitHub. It goes through that all the publicly available source code in GitHub. It creates a model, then it trains that model based on the various usages or various type of projects and how these classes are created and all those stuff, and it trains that model, and based on that it gives you suggestions. And when you start for the first time, it relies on this by default model. As you work more and more with Visual Studio, it starts learning about your way of doing things, your way of creating projects, and your way of writing code. It learns itself, and based on that it gives suggestions specifically personalized for you. So for this particular thing, you can press tab twice, so it will do the whole auto line completion for you. So if I press enter, it will give, say, hey, you probably want to add employee ID. So if I don't need, I can simply go and typing, I'll say city, and say here automatically then again suggest that you probably want to add state and go on. So it goes like that. So as in the first version, there are certain limitations, you can't cycle through the suggestions, it goes in a sequential manner. So hopefully they will bring in more and more functionalities or features to this particular feature in the coming version. So right now it is only limited to the suggestions that is shown in the screen, and there is no way you can go back and forth. If you don't want that, you can easily ignore that. Okay, so this is one of the area where it, all right, so let me go back to the program here. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to create a class of that employee. The moment I type it there, it immediately suggests that you are probably going to create an object of that particular class. So I can press tab two times, it will do the whole line auto completion. Okay, all right, so you can do that. So immediately then it suggests to me that, hey, you created an object of that particular class, do you want to initialize the properties? So I'm going to ignore that and say I'm going to let me okay, let me go back to my employee class. Okay, so what I'm going to do is here is I'm going to show you another way of doing things. So first here I have a class, so I am going to create a constructor, and I'm saying constructor is going to capture is accepting some arguments. It's that. So if I go here and if I refactor here, okay, so here I have some options. Here I am saying that create and assign remaining as properties. So what it does is that it will create properties and it will then automatically assign the parameters to the properties in the constructor. So here I can do this. So you can see that. So you will notice that even though I specified the parameters in Pascal case, in Camel case, when it created the properties, it created in a created the properties with the first name, with the first capital letter and all. Right. So it again automatically does that based on the knowledge it has while going through the model, while going through the source codes that are available publicly. So this is here. Okay, assume that I didn't do that. I want to now manually. Okay, so here what I have is here I have only get property. So let me add the set also here. So I'm going to add set. I'm going to add set here. And if you see here, right, you will see a dot. I'm not sure it's visible for you after that get. It's you'll see a single dot, right? So you can click on that quick factoring, and here I am saying that here the editor is saying that I know that you were adding set properties for your set accessor for your properties. Now you want to do that automatically for the rest of the properties you have. So it will give you a preview like this. These options it will give whether to apply the suggestion for this type or for all the suggestions or ignore, and also you can simply select this. It will do that automatically for you. So assume that you have a class with say 100 properties or something and you are manually adding that. This is particularly a useful feature there. And okay, so here I have the employee class, right? So what I'm going to do is that I am going to say
Uh, Amal, there is another question. Does this version you're demoing which has resharper or any other refactor options come
uh,
okay, come out of the box?
yeah, so okay, so I good question. I missed one point there. So the extensions, with the extensions there is one critical thing. These extensions, right, whatever extensions we have for whatever extensions are available right now for Visual Studio 2019, if most of them may be on 32-bit version. So for 2022, in order to work in 2022, they need to rewrite those retarget that products or the extensions into 64-bit versions, and then only those extensions will be available for you. That being said, the Microsoft has worked with a lot of vendors that are providing these extensions, and they are slowly adding these 64-bit versions of the extensions into the marketplace, and it is available now. I need to check whether resharper is available as of now, but I know Telric extensions on Telric is available, but I need to check with the availability of resharper here. Maybe I can do a search. Looks like not. Maybe in the upcoming versions the extensions will be available. So if you are an extensions developer, you need to keep this in mind. You need to have a 64-bit version of your extension, so to work with the 64-bit version of Studio. All right, so let me come back here. So I was saying this. Okay, so doing this. Okay, so let me this. Okay, so I have created an employee object. So there may be scenarios when you need to transfer from your model to the DTO object, and some you are not using any mapping tools like AutoMapper. You are manually doing that, right? So what you normally do is that you will create the DTO object and start assigning that particular properties, right? So for that, in order to mimic that scenario, I'm creating a different object of the same class. Okay. Okay, so saying that first name else employee first name. So let's see name. So you'll see immediately see that it has modified his recommendations, and it has now saying that you are trying suggesting that maybe you are trying to assign the last name property in the employee object into the second object. So I can go here. So that's how it, as I said, it keeps on learning about your code, and it modifies the suggestions in the background, and it keeps gives you a prompt based on your usage and the context. So how it does that is there is a service running in the background for IntelliCode, and you can see the services here, right? So this is this particular service is responsible for doing all this stuff for you, and it relies on the cloud infrastructure in the background to do provide these suggestions to you. All right, so in the interest of time, let me open another project I have here. Okay, so what I have here is a interface. Okay, interface called iEmployee, and there is two concrete or two implementations of in that particular interface. One is FT employee and one is the temp employee. Okay, so when you are working with a large project and you have an interface that is being implemented by a lot of concrete classes, if you want to see what all are the references or where what all classes are using this particular interface, you normally go to context, this context menu, and find all references and all those stuff, right? So with 2022 they are adding another little bit feature called inheritance margins. So what it does is that you will see a little small icon here alongside your alongside your interface. When you click on that, it will show you all the classes which are inheriting this particular interface. So you can click on that, you can navigate to that, and here also you will see what all are the interface it is inheriting. You can easily navigate that, and you will see that change in the icon. For the interface it is icon with the down arrow, and for the class it is icon with the up arrow. So it provides you the direction in which the inheritance is happening. Again, this is not available by default. As I said, sorry it's in turned on by default. You need to go to text editor, C sharp, text editor, C sharp, advanced, and towards the bottom you'll see that there's an option called show inheritance margin. So again, this is disabled by default. You want to work try with it, you need to go and manually enable that. Okay, so that's one thing. So for the IntelliCode, I can go on. There are a lot of things there. So let me, for the time being, I go to another version or another feature. So assume that I'm going to add a package to my project. I am going to add Newton. So okay, so it's already installed. Okay, so let me see. I have here. Okay, so it's there. All right. So what I'm going to do is that I don't need that. Okay, I'll use a console or right line this and convert. convert. Okay, so at the package, serialize subject. Now another feature is available in Visual Studio 2022 is that it shows hints now. So the serialized object expects a parameter and it will show you a hint. So earlier we used to have this pop-up or the context menu or the pop over here, and we normally see what all parameters or what are types are available there. But with 2022 they have added the option for hint. Again, this needs to be turned on by default, and you can let me test this. Let me add this parameter here. So I have added this now. Okay, so what I'm going to do is that, so you have the using statement here. So I copied that particular statement. Okay, let me remove this. I don't have that using statement here. I copied that particular statement from the other file and I'm pasting it here. So you can see that when you do that, it immediately adds that using statement automatically. You don't need to manually add that now. If it's the package is added and it is available there in the source class, it will automatically add that using statement when you copy and paste code from one file to another. Okay, another useful feature is like, so I have, so now I am removing the statements where I have used the JSON convert library. Now it is it is not being used anywhere. So what you can do is that you can go here and you can say remove unused references. So when you do that, it will automatically uh, this particular feature is not working for my version. I'm not sure what's happening, but so what they are saying is that when you do that, it will automatically remove these references, right? So when you work, as I said, when you work with a large project, you keep on adding these references from time to time, right? And as you refactor the code, you will remove that particular methods used by those reference or your project classes in your project, and you may have added another new libraries or something like that, but these references will be there until you go and manually remove that, right? This has particular what you say the this has a particular effect on your boot up time. When your application is being brought into the memory for the first time, this DLL will be loaded there. So, and your app size of the app will also be bigger, right? So because even though you are not using that, you have referred this in your project, it will copy all those stuff. So you can use this remove unused references. It will go through the code and it will automatically remove those references from your dependencies, so you don't need to go and manually check that and do that.
Amal, there is
Yeah.
one question. Can entity code can be opted out?
Yeah, so you can do that at a micro level too. You have the so here you can see you have the option to turn off lot of features. So here you have the default enabled or disabled. So if you want to disable it as a whole, you can do that, or if you want to do the do at a micro level, certain features you need to disable, certain features you need to enable, you can do that also from the options. It's purely possible. Okay, but okay, so the other thing, let me show you the git. All right, so as I said, like Git has got a separate window and there is a separate menu item. This menu item, top level menu item, is there in the previous versions also, but it is getting better with each version. So here down below you have the branch. If you want to switch a branch or if you want to create a new branch, you can easily do that. You want to change the repository, you can do that. And this is the sync status. You want to pull, push, or do both, and you can do that. And let me edit something here. So when you do that, let's see what all are the changes. If you want to see the differences, you can double click. You get a code compare window where you can see the differences, as well as from here you can commit the changes, you can stash the changes. If you want to commit all, you can do that. Select the branch you want to commit. Everything you can do from the studio itself. Code added. So I'm going to commit this to my Dev branch. I can click on the commit here. You can see the changes. If you want to revert, you want to tag it, everything you can do. And from here, if you want to see the history of the branch, what all commits are made, you can see that. You have both the local as well as the outgoing and incoming ones here. And to manage the branch, you can do here. If you want to create a pull request, though this is a deep link to the GitHub website itself, you can go, when you click on that, it will go directly to the repository you have and create the pull request. So one thing So when you start for the first time, right, you need to connect GitHub account to the Visual Studio by providing the username and password. That's how it pulls all the changes, all the repositories from your GitHub account and into the Visual Studio. All right, what else I had? I think that's pretty much I have lined up for this particular session. And if you have anyone have any questions, maybe I can take that at this time. Raj, any questions?
No, Amal.
Okay.
So there's nothing.
All right. So if that's the case, then thank you very much for taking your time off and attending this short session. I'll share the slides with the whole community so that you can go and refer the links there and download and use the product. And one more thing I wanted to show, if you have any feedback, right, you can do that directly from the product itself. Or if you say if you want to suggest a new feature, you can do that, or submit a feedback. You can go here to open up the site, and you can see what all feedbacks are already there. Already there, you can submit your feedback, or if you want to have a new feature implemented in your product, you can use this particular functionality for doing. All right, if there are no more questions, then we can wrap up. Big thank you for all, and Kebak for having me here. Thank you.
Thank you, Amal. Thank you for a wonderful session. Uh, it was interesting. So everyone, our next session is getting started with Playwright. So Ajib is taking a session on that. You can. It's on July 10th, same time. Uh, you can check out KMX/register. Uh, you will be able to get the details. Thank you. Thank you once again. I'm ending the broadcast. Thank you, Amar.